What's up, everybody? I'm Caleb Show, also known as NFL Caleb 22, and this is Betting the NFL. And as always, I'm with my co-host Derek Weatherly, also known as DWeezy. What's going on, man?
Not much. Looking to find some value. Got a couple more guests this week as we break into a few more divisions as we inch ever closer to the NFL season starting up.
Absolutely. As we've been doing throughout this offseason, we've been going through each division in the NFL, going over their divisional odds to their odds to win the division, their over under win totals, and will they make the playoffs or not? Yes or no. Um, but we are not alone for this episode. We got a couple of guests from Lunch Break Hot Take. Brodny, Jose, how y'all doing?
What's going on?
Doing well. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you all ready to make some money? Because that's what we try. That's what we do on this channel. On the show,
Yes.
we try to make
Let's
these
go.
people money.
That's right.
That's right.
All right.
Papa
But
need a
before we
Snickers
do
bar.
that- yeah.
From
but
here,
bef-
tell Jose need a few Snicker bars, so we might need a few wins in the bag.
I'm telling you.
Yeah,
All right. What we
but
got?
before we do that, before we try to make you guys money, we like to help you guys out. And if you guys can help us out by subscribing to the channel, if you haven't already, if you guys can like this video, if you really want to help us out, join our Patreon. It's in the link in the description down below. Join whatever tier that suits you. We really appreciate it. But yeah, we'll just get right into it. We'll start off with the AFC North division. We'll start with the divisional odds, and the favorite to win the division is the Cincinnati Bengals. They are plus 160 to win the division. Last year they were 12-4, first AFC North, lost in the AFC Championship. They had started kind of rocky with no 2 start, but then won 12 out of 14 games thereafter that. In the offseason, they lost a couple safeties, Jesse Bates, Von Bell, lost tight end, Hayden Hurst. But they signed Orlando Brown, tight end Irv Smith, lineman Cordy Ford, and then they drafted Miles Murphy in the first round out of Alabama. So they still got Burrow. They got the trio of receivers. And then, they still got their offensive weapons, and they added to their offensive line. And they went up from 10 wins to 12 wins from the last 2 seasons. So I think they can hit 13. Their over/under win total is at 11.5, and their chances to will they make the playoffs is at minus 340 at a yes. So with all that said, what do you guys think are the chances? We'll start with the guy who knows the AFC North the best. That's Jose. Now he's a Ravens fan. What do you think the Bengals' chances are to win the division, make the playoffs, and do you think they go over 11.5?
Yeah, I think they go over 11.5. I think the chances of winning the division are really good. I actually gone back and forth on who wins the division, the Bengals or the Ravens. I think my last pick was the Ravens. I'm a little bit higher on them right now, but yeah, look, they added to the O-line. Orlando Brown is a good tackle, right? I know he gets a little bit of criticism because he's missed a couple of blocks here and there. He's not great, but he's a good, solid right tackle, right? So and they desperately need the help on the O-line. They have one of the worst O-lines in the league just like 2 years ago. So they put in some work on that. You bring back you have Chase, you got Jamar Chase, you got T. Higgins. I mean, you know about the wide receiver core. I think they just redid Mixon's deal as well. So they have everything they need to try to make another run. The question is, will they do it? Now, the Ravens, without Lamar in the playoffs last year, gave them everything that they could handle. They just came up short in the games that the game that they did play in Lamar in last year. We handled them. So, that's something to look out for. But even if the Ravens, because I have a high number for the Ravens too. Even if the Ravens win a division, I see both of those teams going over 11 wins.
Okay, Ronnie.
So I'll start with will they make the playoffs? Yes, I think they make the playoffs. I would not bet on them to win the division. I have another team that I feel very strongly about winning the AFC North. In terms of the over under on the win total, he said it's 11.5, right? I would go with the under there. And I don't mean like, oh, they're going to win 6-7 games or anything. I think they're going to land at 10 or 11. And I think like you mentioned, the loss of Bell and Bates is going to be big for them. I mean, they drafted Daxton Hill the previous year, but I don't think that he's going to be able to step in and fill the shoes of Jesse Bates immediately. I think that Orlando Brown is a good upgrade for them, but I think just defensively they're just not going to be where they need to be in the regular season, and I think it's gonna they're gonna get a few more L's than they have or than they did last season. I think that they will get things together and they'll get into the playoffs and they'll be able to make a run. I just don't think they're going to be doing it as division champions.
Easy.
Yes, like Brodny said, I do think this team comes in under that 11.5 wins. I think this team will be a strong wild card contender as things get late in the season. I don't think they'll win this division, thus being a wild card team, and they could easily be probably the top wild card slot. Probably coming in about 9-10 wins, but I do think we see some regression. I think we'll see the defense underperform compared to some of what we saw last season. And on the offensive side of the ball, yes, they'll be able to compensate some with, the weapons everybody knows about at the wide receiver position. Like Jose said, Mixon reworked his deal. So clearly this team is in a win now mode. And I definitely think, they might be something to watch out for come playoff time. But as far as winning the division, I don't think it's going to happen for them.
All right. Well, Hendo's taking the over on the Bengals. And I'm going to be right there with them. I'm going to take the over the 11.5. I like the weapons they got, their offense. Like I said, they've been increasing their win totals for the last 2 years. I think that they can increase it by even one more, or at least stay the same. So which would hit the over 11.5 at plus 160. I like I think it's tough. I'm not going to go right and saying they're going to outright win the division, but if you're going to get a plus number for this division, that's a very tough division. I think that's good value because I think it's going to be a tough battle all the way around. So at plus 160, I would still put a little money on the Bengals to win it, but at minus 340 to get to the playoffs. I do think they make the playoffs, obviously, but I just at minus 340. I think that you're just not getting a lot of value there, just in case if there's an injury that happens to Joe Burrow, he's not ready. Anything like that can happen at minus 340. I don't see a ton of value in making that type of bet for the playoffs. All right.
So, Dave,
thank you for
Dave.
All right, and we'll get to the next team with the second best odds to win the division. That is the Ravens at plus 220. And their over under win total is at 8.5. Their playoff chances is minus 150. And this team was second in the AFC North last year, lost in the wild card, had major injuries throughout the season, a lot of running back, receiver, and obviously the big one at Lamar Jackson was season-ending injury. They had a lot of close games that they had leads in, and they kind of blew at the end. They traded for in the offseason. They traded away Clark. Let go Calais Campbell, let go Marcus Peters, signed OBJ, and then also signed Nelson Aguilar, drafted Zay Flowers in the first round, and now they have a new OC and Todd Monken. So, Jose, what do you think about the Ravens' chances to win the division, over under, and will they make playoffs?
Well, look, as you guys know, I'm not big on betting, but at 8.5 wins, I would say that's easy money right there. Okay. You take that, okay? Because even when the team is down and they don't have any talent, upright Lamar will easily get you 9 to 10 wins, right? Now you got Lamar with weapons, and right now I'm picking them to win the division. Like I said, I have both them and the Bengals getting over 11 wins. So for at 8.5, that's the smart money. And yeah, obviously I had them making the playoffs. So yeah, you take all that, take all of it,
All the money is you're just going all in
all,
on the
all
Ravens.
all in.
Yeah. Spoiler alert, I did pick the Ravens to win the Super Bowl. So you have to make the playoffs to do that.
You don't say.
I have them as the division champion. I know that's going to be a tough race in the AFC North. It's an extremely competitive division, but I do think they get that done. I think 8.5 is real disrespectful for the amount of talent that the Ravens have. Yeah, they brought in Odell, they brought in Nelson Aguilar, they drafted Zay Flowers. They on the O line, they have some question marks at left guard and right tackle. It looks like they may have found their starting left guard. We'll have to see. But a healthy J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards, along with Keaton Mitchell, they have depth at tight end. They have depth at receiver for the first time ever. And then you look at the defensive side, and they've lost a few pieces there, but it was a top 3 defense in the league last year. Even with the issues at corner, right? So they did just sign Jadeveon Clowney to add a little bit more to that edge rusher group, and I think the interior D line is going to really shine for them. I think they have arguably a top 2 or 3 duo at inside linebacker with Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, and I think with Marlon, with Marcus Williams, with Kyle Hamilton on the back end, they'll be able to get enough done. And the biggest thing for them is that Greg Roman is gone, right? And you've already seen it in the preseason games, where for the first time ever you've seen receivers actually running open out there on the field, which is not a thing that you've seen in Baltimore. They're always bunched up, and there's always difficult throws, difficult catches, but they're moving the ball easily in the preseason,
Even on the short routes. Like,
Yeah.
I noticed that in that game the other day, like you don't usually see them that wide open,
right?
And
like Jose said, if Lamar Jackson is there, you're winning more than 8 games. Period. He's that big of a difference maker. So like Jose, all in on Baltimore for those bets. Yeah.
DWeezy, why do you think that this number is so low at 8.5 for the Ravens? Why is Vegas not so high on them?
Honestly, I couldn't give you a reason as far as to why, because as you hear our guests say, there's a lot of reasons to be very bullish on this team going into this season, especially with something that, most might see as a behind-the-scenes type of move where they replace their offensive coordinator. But as you just heard, scheming players open can go a long way when you have talented players, and they definitely revamped the wide receiver core in Baltimore. Outside of your handicap basically being you don't think Lamar Jackson's going to be healthy for a full season, I don't see any reason why anybody would be looking at anything but the over if they're going to put the number at 8.5, because it doesn't line up with some of the other numbers you see when you start looking at things. Baltimore's currently, a top 10 team as far as Super Bowl odds, coming in roughly about 18-1, which isn't that bad in comparison to some of the other numbers you see just outside of the top 10, meaning that, clearly in other places they're bullish on this team being successful. And if you're talking about having less than 8 wins in a season, you're saying that this team won't make the playoffs. And
Right.
I truly don't believe that's the case. I think this team will at minimum be in strong contention to win the division. I think they will win the division. We've seen more of a focus put on the offense when it comes to this Baltimore Ravens team. And, if we see what we've seen out of Baltimore defenses come this next season, even if there's a little bit of a drop off, you would expect them to be in more of the games than we saw last year, where, yes, secondary might be an issue. Me personally, I might even look to fade the secondary as far as targeting player receiving props or possibly passing props for opposing teams, but that still doesn't necessarily equate to them losing the game. A quarterback can throw for 250, 300 yards, and you still win that game by 10, 12 points. So to put this number as low as it is, if you see an 8.5, I would go and smash the over, because where I'm looking, I see a firm 10.5, which is where I would expect this number to be.
I gotta agree with you all, you guys. I see him at double-digit wins, so I think that's an easy over at plus 220. I think it's great. Like I said, it's gonna be close with the other. I think that's great value for plus 220 to win the division. I definitely think they have the talent to win the division. They definitely compete with the Bengals. So that number is great. I would take that. But minus 150 again. I have the same kind of hesitation as Vegas with that number. If there's an injury to Lauren Jackson again and they don't make the playoffs, especially in a tough competitive AFC conference that they play in, I can see just staying away from minus 150. I don't like minus numbers when on these playoffs. When injuries can happen, especially when it has shown to have injuries the last 2 seasons. So on the playoffs, yes or no, I would just stay away. I do think that, like I said, double-digit wins, I think that's enough to get you in the playoffs. But ultimately, I would stay away for making that bet at minus 150 for the Ravens. All right, we'll get to who has the third best odds, and that is the Cleveland Browns coming in at plus 375. Their over-under win totals is at 8.5 as well. And their playoff chances, yes, is at plus 105. And so this was a team on 7-10 last year, fourth in the AFC North, did not make the playoffs. Obviously Watson was suspended for 11 games. Brissett starts the first starts those games, when it goes 4-7, and then Watson goes 500 there after that. They let go Clowney, they let go Kareem Hunt, let go Greedy Williams. Signed Juan Thornhill, Dalvin Tomlinson, and then their top pick in the third round was Cedric Tillman, receiver. So yeah, the first 5 games were pretty brutal. Are pretty brutal for the Cleveland Browns. They play each divisional opponent in the 49ers in that stretch. I don't really believe in Watson. I never believed in him before, especially taking 2 years off. I don't believe him now. So to me, I'm gonna take the under on this one. I think they're gonna finish last in the division, so I'm taking I'm putting no money on them to win the division, and I'm putting a strong money on no to make the playoffs. But what do you think, DWeezy? What do you think of the Browns' chances this season?
Honestly, I gotta say I'm not too high on the Browns. I see a number of minus or 9.5, which, one game variance like that isn't too uncommon to see. Maybe slight variance from book to book. This is definitely not 8.5 versus staring at 10.5 like we just saw with the last team. But I do think that the Browns are going to fall off a little bit. They haven't, in my opinion, done too terribly much to improve this team offensively slowly over the past couple of years. We've seen them lose talent, whether it be on the defensive side of the ball or the offensive side of the ball. And there's still a lot of questions that surround Deshaun Watson and just how potentially well he could go out there and play. And all this being said, with a number like 8.5, 9.5 in that range, definitely got to lean to the under, because I do think this team is going to be in contention to finish last in the division. I feel a little bit better about the Steelers not finishing last than I do about the Browns finishing last in the division. I think, the coaching staff there isn't, some of the worst we've seen compared to, few other coaching staffs that we've seen in past years, but I do not think there's nothing extraordinary about them. There's nothing about this coaching staff or that would make me say they can turn these players into something that they're not. And, once you get on the offensive side of the ball, once you get past Nick Chubb, it's going to be a question of who's going to be that main producer as far as offensive production. And in an NFL where we see offensive being more, prevalent than ever, we saw the Baltimore Ravens team last year that lost a number of games because they couldn't keep up offensively. And I think that's something that we see happen with this with this Cleveland Browns team this year, where the defense might be able to keep them in games, but we could still easily see it slip out of their grasp as far as grabbing the W.
Okay. I'm gonna disagree a little bit there with Derek. I think that with these last two teams, it really, really depends on how their quarterback shows up with Cleveland and Pittsburgh. A good, above average, good performance from either one of those guys, and dramatically increases those teams' chances of making the playoffs, right? But in Cleveland, I think that the roster is set. They have Nick Chubb. He is, arguably one of the best running backs in the league, right? But I think even outside of him, you've got David Njoku, not an elite tight end, but a good tight end. Yeah. You've got Amari Cooper, who's a good, solid number one receiver, and they brought in Elijah Moore. They brought in Cedric Tillman. They have Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think they do have some weapons there that they don't have to lean entirely on Nick Chubb. I think they have a good offensive line. You look at the defense, they went and they got Zadarius Smith to put on the other side of Myles Garrett. I think they're going to be very, very tough to block. So the question comes down to how much do you trust Deshaun Watson? And, he was off for, the year and a half plus. But how long does it take to knock off rust, really? If there's nothing wrong with you. It doesn't take that long. He didn't look good at all last season. He hasn't really looked good in the offseason up to this point. I mean, you've got Browns fans talking about Dorian DTR looking better than Deshaun Watson, and they want him starting. And, if we're putting money on, if you just asked me, I'd be like, this is a good team, very talented roster. And Deshaun Watson's he's gonna get it back. He didn't forget how to play football. But if you're asking me to put money on it, I'm saying no to all of it. I'm saying I'm taking the under. They're not making the playoffs, and I'm not betting on them to win the division.
Yeah, I mean, look, Deshaun Watson before this layoff, he was a top 5 QB in my book, right? He was up there. So yeah, you have somebody that talented and still fairly young. You still have high expectations of them even after a long layoff. But yeah, I mean, this off season, does give you cause for concern. If you're a Browns fan or if you're putting money on them, that's really, like B said, that's really the main thing there. Well, it's not the only thing, but it is one of the main things, right? How is the quarterback going to play? And we expect if he plays decent, there's enough talent for them to go far. But, look, I know it's a hot take thing to say, but man, like the Browns have been the Browns for decades.
They've made the playoffs, I think it's 4 times, or had winning records, I think 4 times in the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, so like
not great.
8.5. Yeah, I think. You could look at the roster and say, yeah, they have all the pieces, and Deshaun Watson plays well. They could win a division, right? But man, like a team like that seems to it's always something wrong. Something always seems to fall apart. Of course, you don't feel comfortable putting your money on it because we can look at this team and say, yeah, they got everything. Deshaun Watson can play very well, but then the defense will fall apart. You know what I'm saying? Like all of a sudden, Zadarius Smith can't get sacks.
Because honestly, that's a team that should have been over 8.5 wins with Jacoby Brissett last year, right? And they didn't do it. So
right. It just, and maybe it's coaching. Maybe coach isn't as good as we think is. I don't know, but definitely, I mean, that's one of those you're gonna have to show me first. I would definitely not put any money on the Browns. A lot of people
Jeremy,
still believe in
was
Deshaun
asked,
Watson
why
because,
do people still believe in Deshaun Watson?
well, like we said, like
Yeah, go ahead.
because a couple years ago he was a top 5 QB, right? And somebody that plays that well. Look, if Josh Allen was took a year and a half off, right? He was still in his 20s, right? You would still think he could play at a high level. Maybe he's not top 5 right out the gate, but you expect that he can get some of that back. You wouldn't think that he just lost it.
Yeah, it was only 6 games. It was just how bad he was is kind of what's shocking. And then he doesn't look back to form right now. But it was only 6 games. The season before that, he threw for 4,800 yards, 33 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. So, I mean,
right.
People are going to still believe. I just wouldn't put any money on it until I actually see it.
Right. There's too many red flags there, like
Yeah.
you're gonna have to prove me wrong first. And in a lot of
I'll
cases,
take the L on that one.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of betting, because sometimes not making a play or not making a bet can actually be the right move, even if you find yourself on the wrong side, because we see crazy things happen in sports all the time, even over the course of a season. And, as I said, sometimes not making that, bet might be the right move in that moment. And even though it would have lost in the end, you still feel good about yourself not losing money on a team like the Browns, even if you lost out on a chance to win a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, like
So
you
nobody
look at
wants to put $5-10 on them.
No, because we're smart people.
It's like you said, you see crazy things all the time, right? Like Markelle Fultz got drafted number 1 overall and forgot how to shoot a basketball, and it took him several years to get it back.
I tell you, I've seen second basemen forget how to throw to first base.
Yeah, it's right over there. But
all right. So no takers on the Browns. Yeah, no takers on the Browns, but we'll get to our final team of the division, and that is the Pittsburgh Steelers, with the first odds to win division at plus 450. But guess what? Their over-under is at 8.5. The playoff chances is at plus 150. And this team 9-8 last season, third in the AFC North, didn't make the playoffs. They had a terrible start to the season, went 2-6, but then ended up strong, 7-9. But losing the tiebreaker to in the end and not making the playoffs. But they still get that Tomlin still gets his streak of not having a losing season. But in the offseason, they lose Devin DeBush, Terrell Edmonds, Cam Sutton, but they also signed Isaac Seumalo, wide receiver Allen Robinson, and cornerback Patrick Peterson. They drafted a tackle Roger Jones from Georgia in the first round. This, I think this one's kind of simple for me, at least. We talk a lot about gamblers' fallacy on the show, and that is just because something hasn't happened doesn't mean it will happen, and that's why I like the over on this one, because I'm going with Tomlin's streak of not having a losing season, because just because it hasn't happened doesn't mean it will happen, and that's what I'm going to go with. That's why I like to put my money on. I like to look at trends. The trend is he does not have losing seasons. Therefore, I would say he gets the over of the 8.5 and gets right at 9 wins for this season. Not really taking any chances on the division. At plus 450, at plus 150 to make the playoffs. I would take a little bit of money on the playoffs, because I like a plus number at 150. I think that's a little bit good value. A little money on that. So I like those bets. But what do you have, Jose?
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. Look, if listen, if he was going to have a losing season, last year would have been the year, right? And it didn't happen. I don't see them having a losing season. I see 9 or 10 wins for them this year, right? They'll be in the mix for a playoffs. Parts of the season they'll be battling for number 1, I think. But yeah, no, man. Like I'm not gonna bet against Tomlin, right? Like clearly he knows football to a point to where he can get a certain amount of wins, no matter who's on that team. That's just what it feels like to me. and the team has talent around him. Again, there's a question mark at quarterback, but it looks like he can get enough out of him, out of Kenny Pickett, to get a decent amount of wins. Yeah, no, I like that. I mean, they'll get 9 or 10, they'll get just above it, but I feel strong about getting above that mark.
Yeah, I'm taking the over on the wins. I think I agree with Jose and you, Caleb. If they get to 9 or 10 wins, I think that they improved the offensive line. So I think you'll see better play out of Najee Harris than you've seen up to this point. They still got Jalen Warren for those big chunk plays. They're getting Calvin Austin back, who can also provide some of that. He's a another playmaker for them. They have receivers in Deontay Johnson and George Pickens. They got a good solid tight end in Pat Freiermuth. And I think that Kenny Pickett is going to be good enough to not trip up that offense. The defensive side obviously is where they're going to struggle, particularly in the secondary. But I think that they have shored up their front seven enough that they'll be up to the task. They'll be all right, and they'll be able to get them into that winning season. In terms of winning the division, I would not bet on them to win the division. I think that it's going to be Baltimore and Cincinnati battling that out, and I think Baltimore wins it. I don't think that they're ever serious threats to win the division, but I am taking them to make the playoffs. I think they get 2 wild cards out of that division, and I think that, like I said, Kenny Pickett, he's looked more comfortable, more confident, and I think at the end of I said this on Suge's show as well, this Steel Conspiracy, that he was making plays for them. Not that he was the best guy out there, but in big moments, he made some big throws. And I think that we'll see that continue. And I think he'll be more consistent overall. So I think they do finish third. They get their winning season. I think they grab one of those wild card spots, but they do not get the division.
Man, so you think 2 wild card spots out of the AFC North. So
Yes,
you're
sir.
saying either the Bills or the Dolphins don't make the playoffs.
No, the Bills and the Dolphins both make it.
Oh, because
there's 3 wild cards. I'm saying the Jets don't make it. The Chargers don't make it. Definitely the Broncos and Raiders don't make it. And nobody else in. I love Anthony Richardson, and I like that Colts roster, but they're not gonna get there this year.
Okay, yeah, you might be right then. You think
the
Chargers
Titans retro jerseys ain't gonna save them?
No.
Okay, all right.
I think the Chargers miss, and that coach gets fired. Justin Herbert gets a little heat for not winning games. They get a good coach in there, and then they're a serious threat moving forward.
He should have been fired after last year. I'd have fired him, but
he should have been. But definitely,
if they don't make the playoffs, he's toast.
Yeah,
I was gonna say if he got fired last year, it'd have been a scary conversation about Sean Payton possibly going to the Chargers, and I don't think anybody not a Chargers fan wants to see that happen.
Yeah.
All right, DWeezy, what are your bets?
Honestly, I do think that the Steelers have a better season than the Browns. I definitely think that with that 8.5 number, the only reason I would be hesitant in touching it as far as the over is because with a trend like what we've seen out of Tomlin in his career with the Steelers, it's the type of number where even if you feel like this team could only get 6-7 wins on the season, you're not putting up a 6.5 or a 7.5 because people are going to come in and bet it all the way up to 8.5, 9.5. And so you're almost forced to put that number at that 8.5, sort of splitting the hairs on winning season, not winning season. And really that's what that number boils down to. And could they win 9 games? Yes. I mean, they very well could. I definitely think this team, if they were in a different division, it would be a more legitimate chance at making a run to win the division. But having 2 teams like the Bengals and the Ravens, basically looking down at them, I think it's going to be tough playing those 2 teams 4 games. And even if you split those games 2-2, you're still going to have to rock out 7-8 more wins to potentially reach the playoffs. So I would like to potentially say under on that 8.5, because I do think this team is a year or two away from being a serious playoff threat. But as we've seen out of Steelers teams in the past, you can't fade them because they will come out and embarrass you and put up 9-10 wins, make it to the playoffs, possibly win the division, and look at you and go, you didn't think we could do this? So I would definitely, look at them as a possible team to make the playoffs in the wild card. Something to potentially look at if you can find a market where they're putting out exact finishing positions of teams within their division. I would definitely look at the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as what their odds might be for finishing second and or third, because unless they expect this team to finish dead last in the conference, that's even if they do expect them to finish last, that second place number and that third place number is probably going to be a little juicy, plus 125, plus 150, somewhere in that range. But that's a heck of a lot nicer number than some of the minus numbers you might see out there trying to find an angle on this team, because, as the fella said, we could see 3 teams make it to the playoffs out of this division. And, and maybe the Browns and the Steelers flip-flop, but I'm definitely higher on the Steelers coming into this season than I am the Browns. So, as far as to make the playoffs, I think it'd be a little bit of a long shot, but I definitely think it's possible. Getting over that 8.5, I mean, if I get my arm twisted, they ain't got to twist that hard to make me take 9. So I think that just shows how good a number that is, given this team and the circumstances surrounding it. And as I said, as far as the win the division, I don't think that will happen, though I do think we see a good team out of this Pittsburgh team this season.
All right. Yeah, it's going to be a very competitive division. I mean, all these teams have a plus number on the odds to win division. 3 teams have 8.5 as their over or under win total, and they're all right there, pretty close with what they're going to make the playoffs. So very competitive division. Those are our thoughts on who you should put your money on. But now we will move on to our next division, and that is the NFC South division of DWeezy and Brodny, Panthers. But we will start with the favorite to win the division, and that is the New Orleans Saints at plus 130.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right if you want to start
Saints
off wrong, but yeah, we can do
that. The Saints have a 9.5 over under win total, and their chances to make the playoffs is at minus 175. This team that went 7-10, they were third in the NFC South. They missed the playoffs. Had their first losing season since 2016. Missed the playoffs for a second consecutive year in a row. In the offseason, they lost Marcus Davenport, Andy Dalton, and then they signed Derek Carr, running back Jamal Williams, drafted Brian Bresee, these tackle out of Clemson, the first round. But what do you think, Brodny, about the Saints' chances to win the division, go over under, and make the playoffs?
Saints are a very talented team. They had a top 10 defense last year. They have, on that offensive side, I think they have some good playmakers in Olave, Rashid Shaheed, obviously Alvin Kamara whenever he gets back from his timeout. Michael Thomas looks like Michael Thomas in the clips that I've seen of him.
Wait, Slant Boy's back for real this time?
Slant Boy's back for real. Jawan Johnson, they just signed Jimmy Graham. They signed Foster Moreau. They have Taysom Hill. And I don't think any one of those guys is particularly good. I think Foster Moreau is probably the best tight end they have. But Taysom, they move him around a lot. He had, I believe, it was 600 yards and 8 or 9 touchdowns, something like that last season, just all over the field. They do have, the pieces on offense. Derek Carr is a big upgrade over their previous quarterback situation.
James.
and Andy Dalton. Like I said, they have the defense, and they've got one of the worst coaches in the league, and
That's the thing.
it's not a great situation. And that Derek Carr is a big upgrade over Dalton and Jameis, and he is. He's a good quarterback. But I just checked real quick, and they hit 10 wins twice in his tenure in Vegas, and yeah, not fantastic. Okay, so it's not something that I'm going to trust. He's not the guy who's putting the team on his back and winning you games and getting you where you need to go. So I'm going to say no on the division. And what was the number? Was it 9.5? You said for the wins?
And 9.5.
That's
9.5 is, it's tough, right? Because it is a garbage ass division, and like you're gonna get some wins just in there, but I've got to go under on the 9.5, and I'm gonna say they don't make the playoffs, and it's all down to Dennis Allen. If they had another coach, I would say they are the runaway favorites to win this division, but they have Dennis Allen, so it's gonna be a no.
Oh, Dennis Allen. Yeah, I agree. Dennis Allen is not a good coach. However, I'm just doing a quick peek at their schedule, man. It looks like they're playing. They got the Vikings, so they're playing the NFC North this year, right? The Vikings, I think, are going to be a worse team. The Bears are going to be a better team. You got the Lions. If you look at Coach Evans from City Tide Films power rankings, he's not high on the Lions. And you got the Packers. I think they'll be a little bit better than people realize. But between their division, the NFC North, they got I think they got the Patriots on the schedule. They got the Rams. I think there's some definitely some winnable games for them there. I think they can be right there. 9-10 wins. I'm gonna say I'll put a little money on it. I don't feel the most comfortable, but I will put a couple of dollars there. Playoffs, yeah, somebody in the NFC gotta make the playoffs. Why not?
Wow.
He didn't even say the NFC South. He said the NFC.
I said NFC. I said yeah. Now, are they going to
somebody
win the
has
division?
to make it so they can have a Super Bowl.
Are they going to win a division?
Yeah.
I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no. I picked the Panthers. I know the Panthers aren't looking good in preseason, but I'm still feeling. I'm still bullish on the Panthers.
All right.
That's all I got.
There.
That's all I got.
Yeah, I definitely don't see the Saints team clearing or getting 10 wins on the season. Definitely going with the under 9.5 wins. Even going up against a conference like the NFC North, in a straight up game, I think I'd lean to taking the Bears, even the Packers. I'd lean towards the Lions. I was big on the Lions last year. People were like, you think they're gonna cover that 5.5? I was like, yeah, they killing that 5.5. But so I definitely think there's a lot of hype behind this team. For it's a lot of smoke and no actual substance. Derek Carr is definitely an improvement at quarterback over what they had under center last season, regardless if you're talking about Jameis Winston or Andy Dalton, both who have, for the most part, been backups either for the majority of their career or at minimum the past 5-6 years. So, bringing in a quarterback like Derek Carr is definitely an improvement there. I did like the Williams signing. I forgot about him coming to the Saints. That was a very it didn't get a lot of attention, and people that follow fantasy know what a TD vulture Williams was last year playing for the Detroit Lions, and it'll be interesting to see if he can produce for the Saints in the same way. But as far as I said, clearing 9.5 wins, in my opinion, that ain't happening. Dennis Allen won't allow it to happen. there's, in my opinion, just a lot of dysfunction along the lines of the coaching staff, and that tends to have an effect on what you see on the field. Earlier we made reference to Greg Roman being replaced in Baltimore, and even in preseason, it seems like there's a noticeable difference there with just how players are behaving on the field schematically. And so I think Dennis Allen with this team is going to have a big effect on them in a negative way. And I would look for some alternate numbers, maybe even under 7.5, under 8.5, because 9.5 ain't happening. I don't think we see a wild card team come out of the NFC South this year. It's going to be a bad division. That's pretty simple. So as far as to make the playoffs, I don't see them winning the division. So that's a no on making the playoffs. I'm definitely taking that under 9.5.
All right. I'm right there with you. I'm going to take the under on them. Like I said, I don't like their coach. I think the coach is bad. He's bad. Kamara's going to miss 3 weeks of the season. You just never know with Michael Thomas what he's going to do. And then at minus 175 with the playoffs, I don't think any of these teams should really have a minus number, so I just stay away from that. Wow. And at plus 130, yeah, plus 130. It's a decent value. I maybe a little money because this division is kind of a toss up. So you can put a little money on one division. I don't think they will, but things happen. And, I really think multiple teams have chances to win the division. So you can put a little money on them at that plus 130. So at least decent value in doing that. All right, we'll get to the second team with the best odds to win the division, and that is the Atlanta Falcons at plus 210. They are 8.5 is their over on the win total, and their chances to make playoffs is plus 150. They were 7-10 last year, fourth in the NFC South. They missed the playoffs. They have 5 consecutive seasons missing the playoffs. They made a switch at quarterback from Mariota to Desmond Ridder, and now he will be starting for this season. They started 4-4, went 3-6 the rest of the way. And now in the offseason, they lost Mariota, Casey Hayward, signed Jesse Bates, and then right tackle Caleb McGarry. Taylor Heineke has a backup. And I don't think they made any significant changes that are really going to make me feel any different about this team going into this season. I still feel the same about that. They're going to be very reliant on the run game, drafting Bijan Robinson in the first round. So I just don't think Desmond Ridder will be good enough to really hit that over on the 8.5 wins at plus 150. There's some. I mean, I wouldn't mind putting a little bit because they could fall in this is the NFC. I mean, you don't know how many wins going to take to win the division into the playoffs. So I mean, there's some value there, and at plus 210. Again, I do like. I think multiple teams have a chance to win this division. So at plus 210, I see some value. You can really spread your money around in this division, to be honest. And that's what I would do. But Derek, how do you see the Falcons turning out the season?
Honestly, I think this is another team with a lot of questions surrounding the quarterback position. Some of it probably slightly unfair just because we haven't seen much out of Desmond Ridder, even though he was drafted last season. For whatever reason, Atlanta decided that they wanted to go the Mariota route, which, unless you like somersaults, I'm not sure that he's the guy for you.
That was an incredible athletic display.
I saw it in person. If that would have been if the wide receiver would have even touched the ball, amazing. But
not the wisest decision. But
exactly, not what you want to see out of your quarterback in the NFL. No look passes are usually frowned upon when you're looking the opposite direction, as in your own end zone. So I definitely think it'll be interesting to see what we get out of Desmond Ridder. I do think this is a team that's shown they're going to lean on their run game and continue to lean on their run game. Drafting Robinson, we they have Cordell Patterson in the background, who, even though they tend to use as a Swiss Army knife-like presence on the offense, we do see him take a number of carries in the backfield, whether it be through design plays or him legitimately lining up at running back. So I would expect lower scoring games out of Atlanta this season. Just the nature of the beast, a team, it's almost archaic now in this day and age of football, but they're going to lean on their run game a lot. That's going to work the clock. That's going to put potential strain on their defense to keep them in games, which I'm not sure if this defense is built well enough to do that. But, clearly, I think drafting Bijan Robinson is a clear sign that while they have a few offensive threats in the receiving game in Drake London and Kyle Pitts, we haven't seen them excel, and I think that's more due to the quarterback play that we've seen in the past. So if Ridder can go out there and perform, it's possible for this to be an over team. I'm not sure, though. We see that I don't have big faith in Ridder. That's my personal preference. And I think if there was a reason to have faith in Ridder, we would have seen it last year when it didn't take 3/4 of the season for them to bench Mariota. And so I'd have to lean to the under when it comes to this team. I know for some reason the books have them priced the way they do with the second the second best odds to win the division. I honestly don't understand what they're looking at. I think this team definitely stays under on that win total. As I said, only one team's making it to the playoffs from this division because they got to win the division. So I definitely got to say this team doesn't make the playoffs and, not win the division, under on game totals. And, during the season, maybe even under on the game totals because less scoring, less time to work the ball. So I think this is just going to be an under team all the way around.
Yeah, I think.
Do you have any faith, Brodny? Or Zay? Either one.
Go ahead, Jose.
No matter. Go ahead. Either one of you have any faith in the Falcons?
Look, they have talent for sure. They probably have the best running back room in the league, right? These type of running backs that I wish the Ravens had in that 2019 season. Like you can hand the ball to any one of them. All three of these guys can get 1,000 yards.
They did have a running back like that. His name is Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, right. Well, no, three of them.
yeah.
They have three of those guys there: Cordell Patterson, Bijan Robinson, obviously, and Tyler Algier.
Yeah.
Right. So amazing running back room there. Obviously, I'm high on Pitts and Drake London, and souped up Matt Collins, aka David Boston. Like you guys seen pictures of him recently? This is look, okay. I don't know if you guys remember David Boston. David Boston decided one year I'm going to go for it. I'm going to take all the steroids and I'm going to get 1,500 yards and then I'll be out the league. Matt Collins looked at that and said, "Yep." So this might be the year. Okay,
the beige Hulk.
He is blown up, and I like Jeremy's comment there saying they should trade for Trey Lance. I like that idea. Trey Lance isn't quite ready yet, but
honestly, under the discussion of possibly trading for Trey Lance, a team that popped in my head was someone like the Arizona Cardinals.
Yeah. But listen, man, I like Trey Lance now over Desmond Ridder. I like Mariota over Desmond Ridder, and definitely over Taylor Heineke, man. Like I know they feel like those are upgrades, and they can get more consistent play, but there's a reason why Heineke was floating out there. All right. I don't see this team win the division. Look, they have talent. I know. Look, they're competitive last year. I think they're about the same as last year. I'm gonna say under 8 wins.
Okay. I'm gonna take the over on the wins.
Okay.
They were a 7-win team last year with Mariota and Desmond Ritter starting the last 4 games. They didn't have Cordell Patterson. Obviously, they didn't have Bijan. They didn't have Kyle Pitts for a lot of the season. They didn't have the upgrades they've made to the defense. They signed Calais Campbell. They signed Jesse Bates as well. They have AJ Terrell still. He's a good starting corner. I think that the defense will be improved, and I think when I say the over, I'm saying 9, not over. I'm saying 9 is where they get very specifically, because they are not going to win the division. They're not going to make the playoffs, and that 9 depends on how quickly they bench Desmond Ritter, because Desmond Ritter's not good. Now, Taylor Heineke is not good either, but he's a different kind of bad. He's the kind of bad that'll throw the ball all over the field and he'll make plays. And they have playmakers on that offense. Like you mentioned, Jose, Tyler Algier was a 6th-round rookie last year, and he ran for over 1,000 yards, and he's the worst running back on that team. They can move Cordell Patterson all over the field. They can move Bijan Robinson all over the field. Kyle Pitts was a 1,000-yard receiver his rookie season. Drake London, I think he's pretty underrated around the league, which makes sense. He's playing for the Falcons, but it's a team that won seven games last year. I think the roster is improved. I think if they make the switch to Taylor Heineke early in the season, they'll be able to get over that hump and make it a winning season, a 9-8 season. It just won't be enough for them to win the division and get to the playoffs.
Okay. We will get to the next team, and that is Brodny's and Derek's Carolina Panthers.
Goddamn right it
with
is.
3rd best odds.
You mean the
third best
favorites
odds
to win the division?
That's right.
Yeah, sure. Not according to Vegas.
That's all right. I'll take that plus number.
Plus 350 to win the division. 7.5 is their over and under win total. And their chances to make the playoffs, yes, is at plus 175. The Panthers went 7-10 last year, 2nd in NFC South, missed the playoffs, fired Mike Rule after the 1-4 start. T-Bucks go 6-6 the rest of the way. They hire Frank Reich in the offseason. They traded away Chris McCaffrey during last season. Went from Baker Mayfield to Darnold to PJ Walker, and now they're all gone. Now they drafted Bryce Young in the 1st round. We'll start with you, Brodny. Will they make the playoffs? Do you put any money on them to win the division? And do you put their money on the over or the under?
I'm taking them to win the division, make the playoffs, obviously, and I think they do hit the over on that 7.5. They won 7 games last year, playing 10 on 11 on offense. They were playing without, and they've solved that problem. Right now it's going to be 11 on 11. It's going to be fair now. I know that they
can throw the ball downfield, folks.
Listen, I know, and this is no disrespect to Derek Carr at all. Derek Carr is a good player. He's a multi-time Pro Bowler. But I do think that by the end of the season, we'll all be saying that Bryce Young is the best quarterback in that division. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Panthers fan. I believe he has that kind of talent. It may not show up immediately, but that's what I'm saying. By the end of the year, I think we'll all be saying, yeah, Bryce is probably the best quarterback in it. They haven't been able to protect him in the preseason, but that's where the big issue comes in, right? But they have had some injuries along the offensive line. They got one of their draft picks back in Chandler Zavala. I think they'll shore up the interior. And so the biggest issue, and it is a big issue. I'm not trying to minimize it. It is a big issue. Their issue is at left tackle right now, and if Ekwonu can get things together. But if they're able to shore up the interior line, which I think they will be, the right tackle is fine. I think they'll be able to help out Ekwonu if needed, and the line will hold up. We also haven't seen Miles Sanders yet. this offseason, this preseason. He's just coming back from injury. He was a 1,200-yard back last season in Philadelphia. I think they'll be able to lean on him. They traded away DJ Moore, which was
painful,
not great. But they may have a deeper wide receiver room than they've had in recent years. Obviously, they don't have the talent at the top end of that depth chart. But Adam Thielen can still play a bit. DJ Chark, when he's healthy, he can play. Hoping for big things out of Jonathan Mingo. I think he'll be inconsistent, but I think he will give them some playmaking ability. And obviously, we're all still crossing our fingers and saying our prayers for Terrace Marshall.
You ain't gonna say that. Jay is currently occupied.
So, and listen, I don't like Hayden Hurst at all. I don't think he's a good tight end. I think he's a backup. But even being that, he represents a big upgrade in that position for Carolina. Now, you look at the defensive side. Brian Burns is a star. Derek Brown took that step and had a great season last year. They went and they got Justin Houston as a stopgap on the other side to be that other pass rusher to go along with Frankie Louvu as well. So I think that the pass rush will be much improved. I actually really like the signing of Deion Jones in the middle as well. He had fallen off after he left Atlanta, and he looked like maybe that was it for him. But I think he's got a little something left. I'm not saying he's going to be a star or anything like that, but I think he can be a solid piece for them. Their issue, like a lot of teams in the league, is going to be at corner, where they just don't have a whole lot of talent. J.C. Horn is a good, solid starting corner. He's had injury issues. Dante Jackson has been wildly inconsistent and is coming back off a torn Achilles. So who knows what you're getting there. C.J. Henderson sucks. The rest of those guys, on a good day, you'll get some decent play out of Keith Taylor. On a bad day, you're like, why is he on the roster? I think they're solid in the safety room. They signed Von Bell. They got Jeremy Chin, and we're just kind of hoping to see a return to his rookie season playmaking. But overall, it's a garbage-ass division, man. Like, it's not science here. If they block for Bryce Young, they're winning this division. That's really what it's coming down to. And they have the best coaching staff in the division by far.
Yeah, like Brodny was saying, one of the major overhauls of this team in the offseason was the coaching staff. Not just Frank Wright, but we saw a new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. They brought in Jim Caldwell as an offensive assistant, maybe / analyst. I'm not quite sure his precise role, but it's clear they brought in not only coaches with experience, but coaches with decades of NFL experience. The offensive line coach they brought in, just clear across the board, it was a major turnover. Deuce Staley came in as the running backs coach. So I definitely think that'll have an effect on this team actually having a legitimate NFL coaching staff. I like a lot of the things that Steve Wilkes was able to do with this team, but in a lot of ways he was handcuffed last year just by the previous coaching regime, in my opinion. Now, folks, last year me and Brodny tried to tell y'all to take the under 7.5. But Baker, they're gonna be better. Y'all ain't listen too bad, because this year we saying take the over, because they're winning the division, in my opinion. I do think this is it's hard to say one of the better teams in the division, but I do think they're more in a position to potentially win the division and put up a 8-9 win season easily. I think double-digit wins would be a stretch, but there's more depth it's hard to say more depth. I think there's more hope around the wide receiver core coming into this season. It's not just we're relying on one guy to show out. Last year, Shi Smith was a player that was able to step up a bit and show out in his second year for the team. Bringing in Miles Sanders is definitely an upgrade at the running back position, even after they traded CMC out to San Fran. I do not think Chuba Hubbard is much to work with. I like more of what I've seen out of Blackshear, who might be their third down back going into the season. But we've definitely seen on the offensive side of the ball some major upgrades. They finally did what they should have done a few years ago and drafted a quarterback. This is, as far as the offensive line concerned, yes, they are definitely legitimate, but something to keep in mind, this is quite possibly the most mobile quarterback that the Panthers have had since Cam Newton. So that does help in ways of relieving a little bit of pressure off your offensive line if they're struggling, being able to potentially move the pocket, roll out, or just knowing in the back of your mind, if you do get beat, you do have somebody that has the potential to get away from a defender. That can definitely go a long ways with making the offensive line's job easier. I do think Bryce Young, he's coming in with a lot of talent, a lot of potential. There's definitely some pieces around him. I don't think this is like some situations you see a rookie quarterback just thrusted out there and expected to perform and put up W's. But I think there'll be some growing pains along the way. But I do have to be bullish on this Panthers team. Me, of all people, have been the biggest skeptic of the Panthers the past few years and been screaming it from the mountaintops. So if I'm saying take the over, there's a good chance that this team has a legitimate shot at not only clearing that over, but making it to the playoffs and winning this division. So give me them plus numbers.
Same here, man.
Same.
Look, I'm picking them to win the division. Look, Jeremy, don't be scared of that O-line. All right, they working out some kinks in the preseason. I don't think they're as bad as they're showing right there. I don't think Ikwanu's that bad. All right, I mean, we talked about that how he looked in that last game, but they'll get that worked out. It's a new scheme for them. They got some real coaches in there now, so it's like he's a rookie again. He's learning how to do things properly. And even the secondary, I understand, like we said, like that's a concern for most teams is, how are cornerbacks going to hold up against these talented wide receivers? But you do have one good one in J.C. Horn, like a real good one. We'll see about the rest of them. I'm high on your safeties, Jeremy Chin. You got Jesse Bates. So I think overall your secondary will be good. And
yeah,
Von Bell. I'm sorry, not Jesse Bates. Von Bell. Overall, like you have enough talent on the defense, and it's going to be about your scheme. And I think Evero is a damn good coach. He's going to scheme up some stuff. He's going to put you guys in great position. So some of those areas that you think you're lacking in, they'll make up for it. On the offensive side, look, I'm high on Jonathan Mingo. I think he's going to end up being your wide receiver one by the end of the season. Adam Thielen, people are sleeping on Adam Thielen because he's a little bit older, right? But I mean, still a solid wide receiver. Had 700 yards last year. I think like 6 or 7 touchdowns. Very capable. And DJ Chark, I mean, his thing is just stay healthy,
And he's saying no to that.
Yeah. And I'm a little bit higher on Hayden Hurst than you are.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's solid. I don't think he's great, but I think he's solid.
I bet you are after you fleeced Atlanta for that second round pick.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, we got Mark Andrews. What do you want me to do?
Hey, look, I ain't got to look at terrible Tommy Tremble and Ian Thomas go out there and attempt to catch passes.
That's what I'm saying. Like, and be admitted, like, he is an upgrade from what you had.
Big one.
Yeah. So I think early on, it's not going to look like it. It's going to be a rough start, but you have an excellent coaching staff, man. You have guys that know what they're doing. They've been there before. You have a talented quarterback that's also coachable. So it won't take long for them to find their stride. And once they hit their stride, man, I don't think the rest of that division has anything for them.
I mean, this was their team last year that when they started winning games, it was hard to slow them down because, it was a big talking point what Steve Wilkes was able to do with this team last year compared to what you saw at the beginning of the season.
I mean, think about some of the games that they lost. I mean, the game to Atlanta, you know what I'm saying? That could have put you guys in the playoffs. And honestly, that shouldn't have even been a flag. That should have been game over. You know, there's a couple other close games. You played a close game to the Ravens last year. There's a couple games that you guys could have had. It could easily went your way, and you'd be 9-win team. So I think 9 wins is definitely doable. I had them at 10 wins.
That's right.
All right. I'm gonna be right there with you guys. Obviously, I've been higher on the Panthers the last couple of years when I probably should not have been. I obviously infamously apologize to Brodny on this show. What? I'm going to continue to put my money down on the Panthers. I mean, I'm going to triple down.
Now's your chance to make it right.
Because Baker and Sam both won jobs this offseason too. They're just keeping it going, man.
Oh,
and PJ.
So I'm gonna put my money again, and hopefully I'm gonna get it right this time. Because
we're blaming you if it goes wrong.
I'll take it. But I do like Bryce Young. They have a hugely tough schedule. Obviously playing the NFC, especially in this division. Not too many top caliber teams on their schedule. I think Frank Reich come in here, make a difference. And if they can win some games with the quarterback situation that they had last year, I definitely they can hit the over going in this season. Will it be enough to win the division? I can put some money on. Like I said, I would spread my money around in this division at plus 350. I think that's a fantastic value for the Panthers. $100 to win 350. That's great, right there. And at plus 175 to make the playoffs. Mike said maybe they can make the even if they won't make the division because NFC, you never know. So I'll put money on the plus 175, and I think 7.5 is very low. I mean, I think they can definitely beat that if they hit 7 last year. I think they can, at the worst, hit one more game and hit the over at 8. So all that I'll put money on. I'm just I hope it goes well this time around, and I don't lose my money again. All right. Well, finally, we will get to the very last team in this division with the worst odds to win it, and that is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at plus 750. Their over/under is at 6.5. Will they make the playoffs? Yes, is at plus 360. So, what do you got, Jose, on the Bucs?
Look, the window has closed, and it's fine because they got a Super Bowl before that window closed. But I mean, it's a wrap. They still have talent on the team, right? Especially on offense. You still got Mike Evans. You still got Chris Godwin. They got a surprise weapon, Raheem Jarrett from Maryland. Be on the lookout. He's having a good preseason. You heard it here first. But the problem is you got Baker Mayfield at quarterback, and Baker's not taking you anywhere. All right. Todd Bowles without Byron Leftwich, I don't feel good. I don't feel good about that. I don't think they're worse than Atlanta, but I don't see them as a playoff team. So I'm taking the under. And even Baker Mayfield, I think you're gonna get a combination of Baker Mayfield and Kyle Trask, right? I think that's how it's going. Baker Mayfield starting out as the starter. Kyle Trask will come in there at some point to see what he has, and it's just not gonna be. It's not gonna work out for them. So give me the under. No playoffs. No division.
All right, Ronnie.
No run game plus Baker Mayfield equals no on all of your questions. They should be in the Caleb Williams sweepstakes. I am.
Man, no,
It is.
no,
It is.
no,
It is
no.
It is malpractice that they didn't trade Mike Evans or Godwin. I mean, preferably
Stay
Mike
tuned.
Evans, but they no under, no playoffs, no division. Get out of here.
All right. There.
Yeah. I mean, I can pretty much sum up my analysis of the Bucs season in 2 words: Baker Mayfield. Hopefully, they'll be able to pass the ball past the line of scrimmage. That's yet to be seen. I truly feel for Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, because we are talking about, top quality wide receivers in the NFL that likely won't be able to do jack diddly out there because of the person throwing them the ball. No run game to take pressure off of the passing game. So you're likely looking at defensive fronts that are more set for, the pass game, which is going to make it that much harder to throw the ball. I think defensively, the defense is somewhat better than the offense, though. We've sort of seen that defense be whittled away at over the past few years since they were able to make it to the Super Bowl and win it. Definitely riding with under. I believe you said it was 7.5. That any number over 5.5, I'd have to ride with the under. Yeah, so I'd still ride with the under on 6.5. It's, I think, honestly, the Bucs going out and signing Baker Mayfield kind of proves that they're not willing to admit that they're closer to being the Bucs team that we all knew growing up than the team that we saw recently winning the Super Bowl and fighting to be in the Super Bowl. And I think that's going to hurt them down the line. And if they happen to finish with one of the worst schedules, cool, awesome. I will, not argue or be upset about that at all. They can even go out and get the top pick and go out and draft like a defensive tackle. That would, be a great move for them. But as far as this team this season, I'd hands down pick them to finish last in the division.
I'm right there with you guys. There's very significant loss. The quarterback on Brady, that's not great. They're going to have a tougher schedule than the rest of these teams, given that they were first place last year, so that's the first place schedule. They have played some pretty tough teams with that schedule: the Bills, Niners, Eagles. It's going to be tough for them. I think Brady kind of covered up for a lot of their holes that they have. I don't think they made any upgrades in the offseason to fill those. And so Baker Mayfield's going to have to walk into having to overcome something I don't think he's capable of. Therefore, I'm going to take the under as well. I'm going to put him as probably one of the worst teams at odds to win the division. This is the only team I wouldn't spread my money to. I would put my money on the other 3. But even at plus 750, I don't know. I think you're just throwing your money away. And then at plus 360 playoffs, it's tempting because anything can happen. But I'd still.
Did you not learn your lesson last year with Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, I don't like any of these. So I'm gonna stay away.
Said no, I did not.
Yeah, no. Yeah, that's what I'm just gonna keep my money on those bets. But that will wrap up our the NFC South. Yeah, definitely appreciate you guys coming on and
thanks for having us,
joining us for this episode. I know it's late, so yeah, I really appreciate it for you guys coming on. But for now, you guys tell the people where they can find you.
Yes, me and B are the Lunch Break Hot Take. You can find us every Wednesday night at 7:15 p.m. Eastern Time, followed by the Overtime Show, which you can find on our Patreon at patreon.com/LBHT Show. And you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at LBHT Show. And like what B has in his in his profile right there, at Ring Kings Pod. That's where you can find us on our boxing channel, Ring Kings Podcast, for all things boxing. Go ahead and follow us at Ring Kings Pod at all those same places.
All right, DWeezy.
Yeah, happy to say that this Sunday I'm gonna be trying my best, and live at 5 p.m. you can catch Against All Odds, where gonna be touching on some not just betting related stories, but definitely some stories I've come across over the past. I've noticed that in betting circles you do come across a variety of news that can affect things in a variety of different ways, and not all of it directly related to betting. Sure, not too many people out there heard the news about Phil Mickelson that was going around in the past couple of weeks. Anybody that wagers potentially $1 billion, in my opinion, that's worth talking about. But yeah, so look for me this Sunday, and I'll be looking to go Sundays, probably about the same time, 5 p.m. Eastern. And I'll be touching on some of the live markets that exist within games. Currently now, that'll be a lot of baseball. But as we get into the NFL, of course, we're going to have those 4 o'clock games on Sunday. And with live markets, more or less, there are openings that come available that aren't always available, don't present themselves as far as before the games start. A favorite gets behind by a few points. You might be looking at a totally different number versus what you saw before the game for them to just win outright. And so, Against All Odds, 5 p.m. And also, you can reach me at Backyak Media on Twitter /X, whatever it is, as BACYAC Media.
All right. You can find me at NFLKO22 on Instagram and X/Twitter. And yeah, just thank everybody who tuned in. Hendo, Ferris, Jeremy, and Davon. Thank you all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with some more going through more of the divisions, doing the same thing until we get to the regular season, where we'll be making our 5 best bets of the week. So tune in throughout every single week of the NFL season, all the way through the Super Bowl, and we will make you money. Well, at least we'll try to. Anyways, all the way throughout the NFL season, and because that's what we do here. We try to make you better bettors. We give you the information. You guys do with it what you can. But yeah, that's our show, and we'll be back next week. But like I always say, let's get ready to make that money.